I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wooded eye. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all of the difference. It's time to take the road to high strangeness and adventure. It's time to. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am your humble host, Mr. Dennis Carroll, and this is The Road Less Traveled, episode 18, Deadly Dolls. And here is my equally fictitious host, Mr. Gerald Fountain.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm about as fine as frog hair, split about 3 different ways.
Wow.
There you go. That's pretty fine.
That is.
Well, we're gonna be creeping everybody out tonight. We're gonna be doing Deadly Dolls tonight. This is
Oh,
always
my.
a creepy one. Oh yeah. What you got going on this week on your channel there, Mister Fountain?
We have on Thursday, we're doing a special show with John Stasko, who is a Bigfoot hunter, and we're going to have some good wild stories from John. And then Sunday, we have Brown Dwarf on for Piercing the Veil. And we're going to be talking about weird stuff out in California in the redwood forests.
And that is a weird place, all right, definitely. Always something weird going on out that way. Well, it's a lot of weirdness around us everywhere now, Gerald, definitely.
Yep. Getting
What else?
weirder every day.
You got anything else going besides that?
Saturday night we'll probably be doing Geezer Geeks with Robert Bauer and Conspiracy Music and Jim Goodall and Terry B from Australia. Then other than that, it's just back again with the road less traveled with you on Monday.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if you got a picture of that second moon out there tonight.
Not yet. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
it's
according
coming now.
According to NASA, we have an extra moon, folks. There's a little asteroid that's caught caught in our orbit for a while. So I think it's going to be gone by November, right?
Yeah, we're going to have it for almost 2 months.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. You know, I was thinking about that the other night. Well, and I need to research this. Maybe there's some kind of legends about a second moon. And maybe that once upon a time, years and years ago, centuries past, we caught a moon for a while, an extra moon. That would be interesting to research. I have to look into that.
I've heard that the Native Americans have talked about 2 moons.
Yeah. I've heard something about that. I need to look into it a little bit more. That sounds very interesting. It's not that far fetched. I mean, it couldn't happen. But I think if we had 2 very large moons circling this planet, it might be somewhat of a catastrophe because you'd have different pulls on tides, and I think you'd have a lot of flooding and stuff because it would not be good, I don't think.
Yeah. We'll have to keep track of the emergency room visits and the police reports on how bad the moon maniacs go if there's 2 of them.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was in law enforcement, we always dreaded a full moon, especially when it came on a weekend. That was bad. That was a double whammy kind of a thing. Yep. Oh, yeah. You get things get kind of crazy about, there used to be a superstition about not sleeping in the moonlight. You did not want to sleep in the moonlight. It was supposed to drive you crazy. That's why you got lunatic thing going on.
Yeah. Moonlight madness, lunatic. Yep.
Yeah. They believe that. Yeah, actually. There's another superstition about, not letting your hair, if you get your hair cut, not letting the birds get a hold of it, because if they weave it into a nest, you will go insane. That's another tradition connected to stuff like that.
especially as a
Here's
cuckoo
what
bird
people
nest.
believe, still do, for that matter. They can. Well, I always say they always surprise me with superstitions. Okay, they always come up with something different, unique. Mhm. And tonight, speaking of unique stuff, we're going to be talking about deadly dolls. Okay, well, let me
Oh,
say I do have a special guest coming up on Paranormal Point of View Friday night. Mr. Drewinski of Cryptid Warfare will be my guest Friday night. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be a good show. And I don't know what who knows what I'll be doing Wednesday night on Hunting the Shadows. We'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be an interesting week. But yeah, we're talking about deadly dolls. Not just a creep factor in that, Gerald. I think the thing is, dolls are us, and we are dolls.
oh,
You know what I'm saying? What do you think about that?
yeah. I mean, they say a lot of times that people are puppets or marionettes.
Well, there's some very famous deadly dolls, and we're going to be talking about them tonight, such as Robert the doll and Annabelle. The creep factor on Annabelle. Some people may be disappointed when they see the actual real Annabelle. It's a Raggedy Ann doll. It's not that evil looking thing that you see in the movie. Okay, it doesn't look at all like that. But that's the interesting thing. We're going to tell the story about Annabelle tonight, definitely. But Hollywood can be deceiving in its looks. Just because something looks evil doesn't necessarily mean it is evil. And the opposite is true. If it looks nice, it doesn't necessarily mean it is.
Right.
That's the tricky part. That's the way it goes with dolls, just like with people, you know. And
Yep.
dolls are us, Gerald. That's what they are. They represent humanity. And when they start doing weird stuff, or otherworldly kind of demonic stuff or whatever, that really upsets people. I think the only thing that has a creep factor like dolls are clowns. What do you think? Yeah.
Yep. I've never really been afraid of clowns. I always liked and enjoyed clowns, especially in the circuses. But I can see in the
Well,
movies and stuff how they're really creepy when you put them in a certain set, a setting and music and
well, clowns can be like the dolls. Okay, they represent us to a certain extent. Although the clown is a caricature of us, you know, it's not us really the way we look. You know what I'm saying? We don't go around
yep.
looking like clowns, thank goodness. But some people do, but I'm not going to get into that. No. But anyway, you got some real clowns in politics, okay? But we're not going there tonight. But anyway, um, they don't. They are a caricature of us and a representation of us. And when it goes bad, that's what makes it so creepy, because like I said before, when I was a kid. I was a monster kid. I love the old monster movies. I used to watch them all the time, all of them. The Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein, the Wolf Man. Those are some of my favorites. But I grew up to find out that monsters were real and they are us. They're not
Wow.
something else altogether. Most of the time, they are us. But look at Frankenstein. He is a human being. Although he's a put together human being, he's still a human being, okay? So is the Wolfman, Now, I won't go that with a creature from the Black Lagoon because he's sort of like an early human, okay? Way back in the prehistoric age of some sort. But anyway, our good friend Jessica had a show today on one of my favorite subjects, lake monsters. And she had a good representation of the creature from the Black Lagoon there. But that's fascinating story. And but when you come to clowns and dolls, like I say, they represent us to a great degree. And when something evil or otherworldly or whatever goes wrong with them, that's where the creep factor comes in. Definitely, I think it's a psychological thing. Definitely, but who wants a clown chasing them with a knife or a doll trying to kill them?
Right.
That's the way it goes.
Unless you're on Scooby Doo.
Oh yeah. I would have got away with it too, then, for those darn kids. But anyway, uh, yeah, most of the villains on Scooby Doo were wearing a mask, by the way, or costumes, as you say. But
Yep.
that's the thing about dolls. I'm gonna tell you a quick story, and this is gonna blow your mind a little bit. But this is a true thing. This really happened in the town where I live. There was a shop that opened up. Okay. And it was sort of, I'm not going to say it's a witchcraft shop, but it had a lot of oddities and curios like to it. And it had maybe some candles and stuff like that. It might be called an occult shop. Okay. Put it that way. But anyway, when they opened up, they started putting dolls around town and leaving them in different places. These dolls were about like maybe a foot and a half high, about average size doll, And they would leaving these dolls all over town, and they would like be sitting on a bench or something like that, and they had a note on them, and the note said this. This really creeped people out. Okay, the note said this: "I've got a soul in me. Take me home."
Oh.
And I had a lot of people call me about that. Of course they know my consultation type services I do. I said, "Dennis, what's going on with this, dude? This is freaking me out here." And I said, "Well, I don't know about the whole thing, but one good thing you might want to consider is do not take it home. Okay, leave it where it's at. Don't mess with it. That might be the best thing." But that was really creepy, and that creeped a lot of people out, Gerald. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, several of the dolls have written communications or talk, supposedly with people, and we'll get into those stories later. But I mean, there's just all kinds of people talking about, having notes or giving notes or talking with the dolls. It's just creepy.
And if you find a doll that's got a soul in it, leave it where it's at. Right. I mean, might be a good idea not to mess with it. I mean, that was just, I'm sorry, maybe they were advertising or something. I don't know, but they went about that the wrong way. Okay, definitely. But there were a lot of people complaining about that. But I think what they were really trying to do, I'm not, I never asked them about it, but maybe they were just trying to call us like a doll adoption thing, but they just went
Right.
about it the wrong way. But anyway, that's kind of like the old Cabbage Patch dolls. They had a birth certificate with them and all that.
Yep.
Remember that?
They had an adoption date with them.
Yeah, I like the Garbage Pail guys myself. Remember that? Yeah.
I used to have garbage pail stickers.
Yeah, yeah. That was neat. But anyway, the Cabbage Patch dolls, yeah, they had a little birth certificate and everything with them. I remember that. I never had one, of course, but I remember that. I remember one Christmas people were fighting over those things in a mall because there was a shortage on them or something like that. But anyway,
We got
yeah.
we got the dolls for our kids that Christmas, and they were hard to get, and people were fighting and grabbing them and taking them away from people while we were buying ours. And we were lucky enough we didn't have a confrontation, but we bought each of our daughters Cabbage Patch dolls. Not sure whatever happened to them though. I don't know if they still have them or not.
Oh yeah. Well, dolls, of course, you got the very famous Voodoo doll. I've got one around here somewhere. I don't know where it's at. Thing moves around on me.
I think I just saw it go behind you.
Yeah, but I'm going to talk to Shiro and Jane and see if she'll send me some of your hair for an experiment. Okay.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Did she cut your hair, girl?
Best time, yeah, the best time to catch is in the spring.
Good. I'll get in
shave all the
contact
beard and
with her.
everything
You
off.
get the feeling a little funny now. Okay, you call me, all right? But anyway, I like that sign somebody put it one time. Said, "If you had a very good weekend, thank me because I took your voodoo doll on a picnic this way Saturday." So, but your voodoo doll, is a representation of you, but it has to have, of course, some hair or fingernail clippings or clothing to make it you. That's the hex part of it. You don't just stick a pin in dolls and expect to get anywhere. You got to have a very personal thing going on, but it is your representation, and supposedly whatever happens to that doll happens to you. That's not good when you look at it that way. Absolutely not. And let me show you.
Now, now on our show
I got,
Sunday, we were talking to Lynn Monet, and she brought up the fact that if you want to take clippings off of people's hair, you need to do it while they're alive, and the essence of their soul and everything is still living in their body. But if you take it after they're dead, their essence and soul is gone, so that hair doesn't have the same properties as when you were alive.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and your personal property, especially something you wear or something like your hair or whatever, and I know the Victorian people were big on taking the hair of the dead and making lockets and braiding stuff out of it. That was a memorial type, a memento mori type
And
thing.
taking pictures with the corpses.
Hmm. But it's a very personal thing, especially if it's a part of your body. Matter of fact, my friend Chantel had a show today with Bryce Watson, and they were talking about some of the darkest witchcraft you can get into, and that's necromancy. They were talking about that on Aquarius Rising, South Africa today, and um, the body parts are essential to necromancy. Certain stuff in necromancy. I'm not going to get into that subject for another time altogether, but they are some of the darkest witchcraft that you can perform because mainly you're using parts of the dead body, you're using dead bodies. That's what the necromancy part of it's all about. It's very dark and evil stuff. Okay. But when you look at a lot of this magic, it is a personal thing. Whether you got somebody's clothing or their hair or image of them, you can do certain spells with a picture of you.
Right.
They can take a picture and do things with it. It's a representation of you.
In voodoo, better than fingernails or hair is if you actually have the whole finger chopped off or the whole hand.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. And a lot of people don't know this. I'll give you a little tidbit here. But you know who Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley is? She's the lady that wrote Frankenstein.
Yep.
Okay. She was married to the poet Percy Shelley, and he got drowned. He drowned in a boating accident, and they cremated him on the shore. And probably out of necessity, it might have been a very humid summer or whatever the situation. And his friend was there, and his friend actually got his heart out of the fire and
Oh,
gave
wow.
it to Mary Shelley. And she kept it the rest of her life. When she died, they found Percy Shelley's heart wrapped up in her desk drawer.
Wow.
So, it's not that far fetched to get really, really, really personal here. You go beyond hair and fingernail clippings, you're really going after body parts. That ain't much more personal than that you can get, And that's where the voodoo doll comes in, though. It's a representation of you, and whatever you do supposedly to that doll, And there are certain rituals you have to do to sort of seal the deal on the doll. Okay, I'm not going to get into that. Like I said, I don't like to tell people this stuff because some people are crazy enough to try it. Okay, but there's certain ritual you do, and it sort of, in a way, brings that doll to life. In a way, it's not moving around and all that, but I'm saying it puts an aura of life like around it, or the essence of the soul that you're trying to attack with a doll. And what that basically is, what a voodoo doll is, Gerald, is a spiritual attack against someone.
Oh.
That's basically what it is. You know. Um, that's why you got the black pins and you stick them in certain areas, and there's certain things you got to say, little ceremonies you got to do, very much like that witch ladder we talked about. You know, every
All
knot
right.
in the witch ladder is a spell, a hex. Every knot that's tied in it with that feather. Same thing with the voodoo doll. Every pin that's put in there is a hex, a bad spell, a curse, or whatever against that person. That's bad. That's pretty bad. 'Cause you can get a lot of pins. You in bad trouble. It's not only, we think a lot of times it's just maybe an ache or pain. It's not really about actual pain, although it can cause that. It's actually actions against you. More so than
Right.
like, sticking one in your heart's not gonna give you a heart attack, kind of thing. But it's gonna give you trouble, in other words. Spiritual type trouble. Yeah.
Yep.
That's an interesting thing about voodoo doll. But now you got another kind, and I'm gonna show that right here. You got what's called a fetish doll. Let me get that picture up here. That's a fetish doll. Also, this is a North American doll called a cochina. And here's another one here. I'll show it. It's another one
Oh
there. They
yeah.
represent different entities and animals. And the Native Americans believe that the spirit of that animal entity is in this doll. Now, this is the big difference between the fetish doll and the voodoo doll. The voodoo doll is a representative of you. It's got your clothing. It's a personal thing. But a fetish doll is a recipient or a holder of a spirit. And here is the most famous one of all. Do you remember this, Gerald?
Oh yeah. That one comes alive and gets you.
Yeah. I have one over here. And whatever you do, don't take the chain off. Okay. But that's a mean little guy right there, buddy. He gave Karen Black a hard time. Definitely. What was the name of that? Can't think of the name of the movie now.
I know. I
But it was
remember watching it.
three different stories, and that was one of them. And she got that doll. It's a fetish doll. But see what the story is on it, and for people not familiar with it, it has a chain around the middle. And it said in the story that if do not remove the chain because there's the spirit of a Zuni warrior in this thing, and somehow or another she got knocked the chain off. It came alive and killed us like they went after her, trying to kill her during the rest of the show. I won't tell you the end. It's a surprise ending to it. But anyway, he gave her a hard time. Do not take the chain off. Okay. If you ever find a doll with a chain on it, you might better leave that chain on. But look at them teeth on that guy. My gosh.
Yeah, it got
Look
some
like a
sharp
shark.
teeth.
Yeah, he chew
He'd,
you up and
he'd,
spit you out.
he'd bite you and stick you with his little spear. And
Yeah, he had a little spear with him. Of course, I think he also used a knife that he found in the kitchen.
yeah,
He was a rough little dude, all right. But
you
that's what
know,
you call a fetish doll.
you,
It is a recipient or holder of a spirit or a soul, you might say, like those dolls I talked about from the witchcraft shop.
if anybody ever travels to West Africa, the biggest fetish market for fetish dolls and all this kind of sorcery stuff is in Loam, and they sell everything from monkeys' heads to skulls to demonic potions to love potions, and they even sell all the ingredients for the spells that are in the witchcraft books and all that. So
Oh,
it's
and,
supposed to be the
and
world's biggest fetish market.
don't forget shrunken heads, like we talked about one time before.
All right.
Shrunken
And they
heads.
have a big collection, supposedly you can buy their actual haunted dolls there.
Oh yeah. And if you can do that, if they can do that, you could do it with certain spells, incantations. You could do the same thing. And it has been done a lot of times in the past by that. But the most famous fetish doll of all is this little guy right here.
Oh, Chucky.
Chucky. Yeah. You know the story about Chucky is that they were after a criminal who knew voodoo. and they shot him and killed him in a toy shop. But before he died, he transferred. We call that spirit transference. He transferred his spirit into Chucky. And the next day, they repackaged Chucky and sold him to a little boy. Remember that?
Yep.
And that's where Chucky began. So Chucky is like a living voodoo doll or fetish doll, more or less like a fetish doll. Of course, he's kind of been a rough life, as you can see by all the scars on him there. But
Poor Chucky.
I like this girlfriend, Tiffany.
Yeah.
She was good too. But Chucky's had a rough life. Absolutely. But he is the most famous fetish doll. A lot of people don't understand he's a fetish doll, but that's basically what he is. Because there was a transference of spirits into him. And you know, this thing seems the same thing with as I was talking about before the show. The same thing with like the Dybbuk box. Is you can supposedly put spirits in, especially evil spirits, you can trap them in things
Right.
like boxes, bottles,
Yeah.
wang bottles, whatever the
Brass
situation.
lanterns.
That's where you get the genie in a bottle. Okay, the genie is a demon spirit, by the way, folks. Okay, it don't look like Barbara Eden. Okay, it is a demon spirit in a bottle,
Or a
and
gin.
you let it out, you're looking for trouble. You may not get any wishes out of it. Okay, but you're gonna get some trouble. Anyway, anything can be a recipient for spirit like that. If you trap it and hex it the right way, it will go in whatever container you want. But that's what fetish dolls are. They're containers. But now sometimes a fetish can also be, it doesn't have to be a doll, it can be like a bundle of feathers and bones, and that can represent you as well. That can be part of a spell. Let me tell you this right quick. In order for you to hex someone, really hex them, put a curse on them, you have to leave an object. Remember when I told you a story about my knife that was
Right.
found out in my yard with the death curse on it? You have to leave an object. That represents the spell, the curse, the hex, or whatever it is you're talking about. And that can be true about a doll or a fetish thing. And it doesn't have to be just a fetish doll. It can be just, a bundle of feathers, bones, whatever the situation. A lot of the evil fetishes are chicken claws. They use them a lot. And I
Right.
know you're familiar with that. Yeah.
Lot in voodoo.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. If you ever see that hanging up on somebody's porch, you might ought to leave them alone. Okay. Because usually they can be used as protective fetishes as well as bad fetishes or cursed fetishes against people. But that's fascinating thing about dogs. Like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, they are us. They represent us. And what better receptacle for a soul can you think of than a dog? You know,
Right.
perfect. Especially when you come to something like this guy.
Oh,
There's
Robert.
Robert the doll. Now he is supposed to have a demon spirit in him, by the way, not a human soul, but a demon spirit. You want to tell everybody the story of Robert?
Well,
Girl?
from what I know of Robert,
Mm-hmm.
there was a couple that had a young son and they wanted a companion for him. So they ended up getting this doll to keep him company and they were inseparable. And the funny thing is, they would catch their son, who was Robert Eugene Otto, and they called him Eugene. He would be having full on conversations with Robert, and the parents would hear it behind the door. And they heard two distinct voices, not just the son's, but somebody else's voice. And so that's how he got to the point where Robert was haunted and had some kind of spirit in it or demon. And then after the son died, Robert was still kept up in the son's room, and people that were walking by would see little glimpses of a boy up in the window and going back and forth and seeing little glimpses of Robert after the son had passed.
And here's the creepy factor too in this. They would dress the little boy just like Robert. He had a little sailor suit and everything, just like Robert had on. That's really freaky. Absolutely. It was almost like this was the little boy's twin. You know.
Yep.
Let me see here. I got a question.
Eh,
Joe Bubbles here wants to know: can you trap demons in mirrors like in Constantine? There are supposed to be hexes that will do that. That can trap spirits in a mirror. That's why they covered spirits when somebody died. They covered mirrors to keep their spirits from being trapped, supposedly in those mirrors. It's very interesting. Mirrors, that's a whole nother show. We might ought to do a show one night on mirrors because that's a fascinating subject.
yeah.
But there are two things you should never do with a mirror. One, you should never sleep directly under a mirror, or sleep with your image in that mirror. Put it that way. And you should never cross mirrors,
Oh,
supposedly. And there used to be a superstition years ago that you did not sleep in a room with a mirror without covering that mirror up. Because they felt that there were certain things that could come. Mirrors are like portals. And they felt that they were doorways to the spirit world. And they were scared that things would come through and attack them, especially while they were asleep with them. That's an interesting thing about mirrors, yeah.
now that picture you have up of Robert, all those notes pinned up on the wall behind him is from people that have taken pictures and said bad things about Robert. And when they go home, they have strange things happening to them, whether it's illness or people being in car accidents. So they actually bring back a letter apologizing and asking for forgiveness, and it has to be posted on those boards around Robert to be forgiven.
That's the good thing about Robert, Gerald. He demanded respect. You didn't disrespect Robert and get away with it. He gets you on that point. I think we got Chicky Blues talked about the island of dolls. Yeah, we're gonna get to that shortly. The island dolls is real freaky. But I want to say one more thing about Robert. The interesting thing about him is they would take him and put him up in the attic and put him in different places, and he would actually show up somewhere else.
Yep.
That was freaky, definitely. That is in my book. That's a haunted doll. Okay, if they can do that kind of stuff, they're haunted, definitely. But now we come to the most famous haunted doll of all,
Ooh,
Annabelle.
Annabelle.
Yeah, you want to tell everybody about Annabelle?
Well, Annabelle is actually in a museum now of Ed and Lorraine Warren, from the movie The Conjuring. If you've ever seen The Conjuring house, they have a museum for artifacts like this, and Annabelle got donated to it. And a mother gave this doll to her nursing student that was in college, and she shared a room with another gal, and they had nothing but crazy stuff going on. As soon as they got that doll, they figured it out.
Well, the thing about that, Gerald, is that a demonic spirit inhabited this doll and was using this doll to try to get a rapport going with those nursing students. Okay. That's what the whole thing was. It was trying to insinuate itself into their life and trying to insert its way in there and mess around with them, really screw them up, which is the way demonic spirits do. That's what made Annabelle so dangerous. And you notice the sign on there. It says, do not under any circumstances. You can't see the whole sign, but it says, do not under any circumstances remove this doll from the housing. If you'll notice, the housing has different things on it to keep that doll in place. One's, I think,
Right.
the tarot cards on there. Of course, you have a cross. You have, by the way, if you're there and you see it, it has salt, and it's been salted. It's been placed in that protected thing, not because it's trying to keep people from messing with it, trying to keep it from messing with you. That's the way it goes. And this is supposed to be the most dangerous doll in the world because supposedly the demonic spirit is still in it.
Yep. And in 2020, there was a rumor going around that Annabelle was no longer in her shrine or her encased encampment, and people, it was spreading wild all over the place. And then finally, Ed Warren's son, showed a picture of her back in her case.
Well, that's the
So I
thing
don't
about
know if she really disappeared or they took her out for a while or that was just a rumor going around.
thing about Annabelle is the doll that you see in the movie does not look anything at all like that. That's the real one. It's just a raggedy, remember there was Raggedy Ann and Raggedy Andy.
Right.
Yeah, there was a boy doll as well. But it, that's Hollywood. They make it look more evil. It looks like. But here's the interest. Here's what makes it more creepy to me. Is it looks so nice. That's the interesting part. It looks so innocent, but yet it's so full of darkness. That's the bad. That's kind of what creeps you out a little bit about it. It's really more scary looking to me than the one in the movie.
Yeah.
The Cryptid Hunter says she had a doll identical to her when he was a kid. It didn't move around on its own, though, did it, Cryptid Hunters? I hope not. Yeah. But this, I think it was one scene where, like, there was a knock at the door or something. They put the doll in a garbage can or something and went back in and knock on the door, open the door, and the doll's there. There's the door, went back in. That was freaky.
Yeah, there's been lots of dolls where people have tried to destroy it, get rid of it, throw it in the garbage, and it shows back up in the house.
Well, Jessica, if your doll starts moving around, call me, okay?
Yeah, does she still have it?
Yeah, let me know. The tarot card is like the devil. Yes, it is. I think it is. I believe it's the tarot card of the devil. I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why that's there. I have never seen one used as a detective thing like that. I don't know. Somebody might have placed it there. It might not have been what Ed and Lorraine Warren. I don't know if I ever told you I met Lorraine Warren once. She was real nice. I liked Ed though. Ed was the one I really wanted to meet because Lorraine's a little flaky, But I mean, she's okay. But she was all right. She was nice. But I really wanted Ed was the one I really wanted to talk with. But anyway, that is strange. But like I say, usually if you're going to do something, and I have items here that I have that have been salted and blessed with oil to make sure they don't do things. Okay, that's the way you got to handle that.
Right.
If you ever get an item, whether it's a doll or anything, and my advice to you is not to buy used dolls. You buy any kind of a used item, you may be buying some trouble. I would advise you to buy something new, never used before, unless you get a deal like Chucky. They thought he was new, okay. But anyway, that's my advice to you. Don't buy new and don't buy old because you don't know what you might be buying. But if you ever run into an object of any kind, or you find a fetish, and I've talked to people about this before, always know what's around you, what's in your environment. If something strange appears that shouldn't be there, you need to take care of it because that's how spells are cast and hexes are cast. They leave these items or objects in your possession, whether you know it or not. And if you do encounter something like that, there are steps you can take to nullify that. But I advise you to do it quickly and do what you need to do. But if it's a fetish or any kind of a spell bag or hex bundle or whatever, after you salt it, but put oil on it or whatever you need to do, then you need to burn that item. If it's a spell or hex, you need to burn it. That's the one way you finally eradicate it. That's what you do with witchcraft. But we advise you not to do that with Ouija boards because that's a different
Right.
item altogether. You don't do that with Ouija boards. Um, because it is a doorway thing. It's not a hex or spell. Okay, that's a different thing altogether. But anyway, I'm getting technical, but that's what you do if you run into that problem, and that includes the doll. Okay, it can be a doll or something like that. My advice to you is to do it that way because you don't want an Annabelle in your house. Definitely not. Ah, she doesn't have it anymore. She said, Krypton, she doesn't have it anymore.
That's
Okay.
good.
Okay. Well, if you ever get another one and it starts moving around, call me. Okay. We do not want dolls moving that they're not supposed to move. Okay? That's not a good sign. That's a real creep factor there, definitely. Um, but here's the thing about it. Another kind of a thing, and we're going to talk about this. I'm going to get to the island of dolls in a minute. I've always wanted to go there and check that place out, by the way. But anyway, another doll that we don't think too much about are mannequins. You remember the
Right.
very famous Twilight Zone mannequin story? Remember that? The girl
Yep.
that would come to life? Um, Mannequins are creepy, and that includes the wax figures you see in wax museums and stuff like that. A lot of horror stories have been written about that kind of stuff. I know one very famous horror story was where it was the Wax Museum's Road Gallery, and it was the fact that there was a killer, kind of like Jack the Ripper, was going around killing people, and they never hadn't caught him, but they had a wax figure of him. And the guy that was he was a new guy, and he was like the night watchman there that night. And he would walk through the Wax Museum, and every now and then he noticed that that figure, that killer, had moved slightly. And he got to looking at it, and he found, well, the end of the story is it's not the wax figure has been replaced by the real killer.
Right.
And he's the one, and he kills the night watchman. That's a freaky story. But that is another creep factor. A wax museum, place like that. That is freaky to me. What about you? What do you think about that, girl?
Absolutely. I remember watching Alfred Hitchcock Hour or whatever, and they had the House of Wax museum where they had the criminal in there, the Jack the Ripper kind of guy. But yeah, you get exact replicas like that. And I've always wondered, how do they get them exact? Do they actually have the bodies of some of the people and they cast the wax over top of them, or do they carve them from I mean, that'd be hard to carve it from a picture.
By the way, since you mentioned Jack the Ripper, I'll tell you about this. My grandmother Carol, was a little baby when Jack the Ripper was slicing people up. Okay,
Oh,
that's
wow.
weird to think about that you can live in one generation or something like that. But it says Wizard Moon says I have a Ouija board still in the box that came in. Never used it. Not sure why I keep it here. I would not keep it there if I were you because somebody might be tempted to use it sometime. It might be a good idea to get rid of it.
Oh.
Let's see. I have my mother's scary doll wrapped in a pillowcase. That doll saw a lot. Yeah, try to throw it
No.
out. Tried to throw my mother's doll out somehow. Or another. She knew and dug it out of the trash.
Now I
Okay.
had a Charles MacArthur ventriloquist doll that my
Oh yeah.
mom picked up somewhere at a yard sale, whatever, and it was on grandma's rocker in my room. Had an old rocker and it sat in there. It didn't ever bother me, but my nieces and nephews that used to sleep in my room after I moved out, they go spend a weekend with grandma and grandpa. They were creeped out by that doll. They swore up and down that it looked at them and followed them and moved and all kinds of stuff.
Weird.
So my mom, grandma had to move it out of the room. It couldn't stay in there no longer.
Shim's Alley Girl says, whenever I go in thrift stores, I stay far away from dolls. They just creep me out anymore. They just creep me out. I swear some of them follow you in their eyes. Well, they represent us. That's what the creep factor is that we talked about at the beginning of the show. They are us in a way, but only in a way. And I think that's the creep factor that we're picking up on. They look like us. They have eyes like we do. They have faces like we do. I mean, what else could creep you out that easy? Definitely
Right.
dogs. Yeah.
I have my aunt and uncle were artists. And my uncle painted a picture of my grandma, my mom's mother, holding me as a baby. And if you walk, I have it in our house. If you walk by that picture, you can see grandma's eyes follow you wherever you go in the room.
Oh yeah. I think it's an optical illusion.
It is. It's done in
Yeah.
the painting, but I
Yeah.
mean that tells you how good of an artist he was. That the eyes follow you.
Of course, always in the haunted house movies, you could move the eyes out, and put the real eyes in there, and watching people.
Ah,
Uh, there's Joe Bubbles says I super soak everything with holy water just to make sure. That's a good idea. Yeah, absolutely. But now I'm getting to the island of dolls.
oh my!
Okay, not the island of misfit dolls. That's a different one.
Oh,
That's Rudolph the
I
Red-Nosed
was looking
Reindeer.
forward to that story.
Yeah, yeah. This is the island of dolls. It is a creepy looking place, Gerald. You want to tell everybody about that?
Well, from what I know of the island of Dalles, is it's in New Mexico or
Mm-hmm.
Mexico. I can't remember if it's New Mexico or Mexico itself, but I think it's
New
New
Mexico.
Mexico.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a little island, a little floating like garden with trees and flowers and everything. And supposedly the guy that was a caretaker or the guy that owned the island, I don't know if they owned it or not, but he found a little girl that had drowned. And so he took care of the little girl, and then he found the doll that was supposedly her doll floating in the water. So he took it as a memorial and hung it up on a bush or a tree on the island. And then after that, more and more dolls were added to the island, and it became the island of the dolls.
That's the interesting thing, like I was mentioning about on Shanty's show today. Her and Bryce Watson were talking about necromancy and you use certain body parts of that. There's the belief that even like with a drowned person or whatever the situation is, that body leaves something behind, whether it's a spirit or whether it's the essence or aura of someone or whatever the situation is. There is a spiritual transference thing going on there with the body parts and all that stuff. To me, that's fascinating. But and I think it also is, it's not like your life essence. It's sort of left behind in something like that, whether it's the body part or something that was very close to you in life, whatever. That can be an object, I've seen many cases where, and I'm gonna say this: I had a very interesting case one time, Gerald. One of the most prevalent hauntings I ever investigated turned out to be involved with someone's ashes. You don't get much closer to someone than their ashes, okay? That's left behind after cremation. Um, Sometimes, and I've had a lot of people ask me this, I think sometimes, unless you can spiritually handle it, it's not a good idea to retain those ashes. You know what I'm saying? It's not a good
Right.
idea to keep them around unless you can handle it. That's your own personal preference. But there's been a lot of trouble caused by that in a lot of cases I've seen. And I think that's part of the body. And I think dolls can do that too, to a certain extent. Somebody like a child that played with a doll or loved that doll and put love and emotion on that doll. I think some of that's left behind with
Yep.
that doll sometimes. You know what I'm saying? There's a transference there. Maybe not a spiritual transference, but there can be an emotional transference. And one of the most prevalent forces of your psyche is your emotion. Emotions can do a lot, you know, and it's very important to realize that if you put emotional depth into something, whether it be a doll or a book or whatever the situation is, that's what a lot of writers will tell you. that a lot of their creative essence goes into a book or an article, whatever it is they write,
Right.
poem, song, or whatever. A lot of them goes into that. That's why AI can never really capture that, because AI ain't got a what, Gerald?
Conscience or a
Soul.
soul.
It ain't got a soul.
Now,
And
supposedly
a
that little
lot of
girl
human
was
soul
holding
goes
that
into
doll.
whatever we do, whatever our creative process is. If you're a musician, it goes into your musical instrument. You know what I'm saying? Like your
Right.
guitar or whatever, or whatever the situation. You put a lot of emotion into it. I think it retains a little bit of you to a certain degree, a little bit of your essence. Put it that way.
Yep. Yeah, when that little girl drowned, she was supposedly holding that doll, and it was obviously a traumatic experience, and that's why the her soul or essence went into that doll. And a lot of the dolls that we've talked about, they transfer that way. They've always like the little girl or little boy was always holding it or in contact with it all the time, and something traumatic happened.
Oh yeah, it's sort of like Linus's security blanket, kind of a thing. And I have
Yep.
seen that happen. I know one time it's very tragic. I went to a home for children, and this is during a law enforcement thing. And this was a little girl there. This poor little girl had been so traumatized that she would do nothing but stand in a corner all the time. But the little girl had a doll, and she would keep that doll right next to her heart. I mean, and one of the women there said we tried to take the doll away from her. I said, "Oh, I wouldn't do that because that's emotional security for her in a way." That poor girl had been traumatized. I don't know what she had seen or what the story was, but you could just see the trauma this little girl had. You know what I'm saying? And
Yep.
emotionally scarred by this, and psychically scarred by it. That doll was the only thing she had left in the world. I would not to take that away from anybody. When they wasn't ready to let go of it for sure. But some psychiatrists, I don't know about it. Some of them, they're not like normal people sometimes. But anyway, um, that I can see where a child that would be a stand-in for them for something
Right.
like that. Yeah, definitely. And I could see where something like that, especially if a child had passed on, might still be connected to that child in that way, emotionally and spiritually in a way. I
Right.
could see where there could be a connection. Oh yeah.
Just like when people pass away, whether it's an old married couple or a young couple that were deeply in love, sometimes if one of them passes away, they don't want to leave. They don't want to go to the other side until they can take care of or make sure their other one's taken care of. So maybe with the child, maybe if that doll is their special one that they had a connection with, maybe they don't want to leave the doll. Maybe the spirit stays there with the doll.
I'll tell you on personal story, mine. Uh, I was very close to my dog. My dog was like my son to me when he passed on. He was blind for a couple of years. He couldn't see anything. And he would bump into my chair once in a while, where I sat in the living room, in front of the TV there. And it was a certain thing about it. It was a bump to it. And I could tell. And since he's passed on, I felt that bump about 3 or 4 times. And at one time, I caught myself looking down to see him. He wasn't there, of course. But
Right.
it was almost, I felt like he was. And I think things that are so emotionally attached to you in that way. So, and animals can give love just like we can give love. They give love
Yep.
back. That's the interesting thing. And don't tell me something that can do that don't have a soul, okay? Because I don't believe that. Something
Right.
that can love and have that emotion and that devotion is definitely something that's got a soul in my book. But there is that connection, Gerald. I think that's what we see a lot of times in these. I'm gonna tell you what. I spent one freaky night on an island in a lake not far from where I'm at. I'm gonna tell a story one day, but it was the weirdest night of my life on the island of the dead because this island was nothing but a graveyard. Okay, it used to be many years ago. It used to be a plantation. Okay, and with a bunch of graves. I'm gonna tell a story about it one night in a fog. One of the weirdest fogs I have ever seen in my life. I'm gonna tell this story one night. But anyway, that night proved to me, without a doubt, with my own eyes, that there was something beyond this life. There's something that continues beyond this life. Put it that way.
Yep.
And I believe objects can hold that same thing as well to a certain extent because we become spiritually, mentally, and emotionally attached to these things. And just like you said, that people who are devoted to each other and one passes on, there's like something holding them back sometimes, especially on the living part. If the living doesn't let the dead go, for sure, keeping the memory going and keeping thinking about them all the time and all that stuff, there's going to be a connection, no matter which way you look at it. Okay,
Right.
there's going to be a connection, and really though, that's not good in a way. I counseled a guy one time who was very devoted to his wife. He had pictures of his wife everywhere, and she died under very tragic circumstances. He was haunted by her, by the way, but he had pictures of her everywhere. And I said, "Look, you got to turn her loose. I know you can still remember her, you still love her. I'm just saying, but you don't need to be so fixated upon this. You don't need to be obsessed with it because you need to turn her loose because you may be keeping her tied to you
Right.
emotionally that way, spiritually. Okay." And I think objects can do the same thing. Certain objects. I had a woman one time give me a gun, and she was a small derringer, and she said, "Take this." She said, "Please take this from me." And I'd been talking to her about objects and all, and she said, "Wait a minute, I got something I want to give you." She went in the house, come back with this gun, and she didn't. She said, "This gun murdered somebody," because I was standing there and I saw it happen. And my stepfather left this gun to me.
Oh,
And I said, "Well, I will take it from you." I said this thing was a burden on her. Okay. She still had this bad connection to it. And I said, "I will take this." I put gloves on, by the way. Okay. I put gloves on. And I said, "I will take this from you. Give it to me now. And you'll no longer be connected to it. I'll take it and bury it," which I did. I said, "I'll take it and I'll bury this. You'll no longer be." And I'm going to tell you something, Gerald. So the moment she put that thing in my hands, it looked like, I mean, I could see it, like 200 pounds lifted off of this woman.
wow.
But that's how objects can do you. Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm checking the thing out here and see what we got going here. Does that mean there is an unsolved murder? I don't know about that. I never did. I didn't get too deep into the history of that. The man died. He was a sheriff somewhere in Mississippi, I think. And he said she said that night he seen her pull this. He was just a small 22 caliber Derringer. She said she saw him pull it out of his pants pocket and shoot the man in the head and kill him on the
Wow.
side of the road. And so she saw it happen. And not only was that a traumatic thing for her as a child to see, I think she was like a teenager, maybe around 12, something like that. That was only traumatic for her to see, but also that was a murder weapon. Some of the most dark objects you'll ever run into are
Wow.
murder weapons, whether they be a knife, axe, like Lizzie Borden's axe, if you were to find that, or whatever the situation. They are very dark objects. It's almost as if there's a evil transference into them from the evil act that's committed with them. So it's no longer just an inanimate object to a certain extent. It has, like I say, that patina of evil on it because of what it's involved in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't take chances. Well, like I say, I put gloves on. I said, hold on, man, let me put some gloves on here. I don't want to touch it. I don't want it on me, But I actually did, I did the salt and all that on it and buried it. I know where it's buried at, but I'm not going back there. But that's what you need. It's very much like some objects that have you. If you suspect an object has a spiritual transference, like a Ouija board, you don't need to burn that. Okay, I want to specify that. Hexes, spells, witchcraft, fetishes, yeah, you burn those because that destroys the power to them. That cuts the power. But an object like Ouija board, guns, or whatever situation is, they need to be buried, really. They need to be what you do is you do sort of a spiritual death on them. You salt them, you say a prayer over them, whatever you need to do, you put all holy water or whatever, and you need to put them in the ground. You need to kill them and bury them.
Right.
That breaks the cycle. And I'm going to do a small tutorial pretty soon. I'm going to drop it on my channel. How you break curses. There's a certain way you go about and a certain way you do things you'd have to do to actual break. And I'm not talking about just witchcraft hexes, curses. I'm talking about family curses, bloodline curses, stuff like that. I'm going to do a small tutorial on that, so everybody be watching for that. Because I've had a lot of people come to me just recently. I think I got a curse on me. I think I might be, under a family curse or something. So I'm going to go on there and tell you how to do it. And this absolutely works. You know me, Gerald. I don't do nothing if it don't work.
Right.
But I'm going to do a little tutorial on that so you can be watching for it.
People and you were talking about pets. My one of my first pets as an adult was a chow chow that I got from a pet store when I was a baby. And when we had to put it to sleep, that next morning, as I got out of bed, it always laid on my side on the floor, and I could put my feet down and rub its side, because I knew it was right there below me, and I felt that same sensation for several nights after that, like that dog was laying there when I woke up.
Oh yeah, I believe without doubt they are tied to us, for forever, how long that may be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anything can do that, or anything it means that much to you. There is a definite tie there. Crystal says, yes, I've known people that have bought things from antique shops and had weird things happen afterwards, and they would get rid of the object and it would no longer bother them. Oh yeah, I told you that very interesting incident I had with a love seat. And the woman, called me. She said, I've lived in this house 30 years, never had any problem, and all of a sudden I got weird paranormal activity going on and all that. And that's the first thing I said, well, have you been messing around with witchcraft or what have you been doing some bad stuff? So, oh, no, I wasn't doing I'm a good Christian woman. I wasn't doing anything like that. I said, well, have you bought something new that you recently bought something? She said, no. I said, well, I did buy a love seat at a yard sale, And I said, well, that's very interesting. Go back to where you bought it and find out what the history is on that. Find out what you can about that love seat. She called me a week later and she said, how did you know about that love seat? I didn't know anything about it. She said, well, I found out the man committed suicide on it.
Oh, wow.
I said, well, get rid of it. That's your problem right there. Get rid of that. And of course she did, and that solved the problem. But there was that aurora still around it, that patina still clinging to it of a very bad and traumatic, dark episode there, You're going to run into that. John Corbin says we picked up a few tons from a flea market and they were desperate to get rid of it and had an attachment. Once detached, now a fine piece of. Yeah, well, since if it had had some kind of a small detachment, I would have told the woman what to do. But since that was a murder, a suicide thing, which is just as dark as murder, by the way, in that respect. I said it might be just a good idea to get rid of it, and
Right.
that nip the whole problem in the bud. But if it's something that, like, maybe it's been in a house where something has happened and not involved with the actual thing, you can definitely get rid of the attachment to it that it might have on it. It's not that bad, and you can keep the item, but you got to do it the right way.
Yep.
Same thing with
Even in
dogs.
Japan, in the suicide forest, when people go there to commit suicide,
Oh yeah.
there is dowels hanging in the trees from people that take their dowels with, or people bring dowels as a memorial of the loved one that passed away, or businessmen have their suit, their briefcases out there, and their umbrellas and anything that was with them at the time of the suicide. It's like a monument or a shrine. They leave them there. They don't dare remove those objects from the suicide forest.
It's strange about certain places like that, like the Island of Dolls. It seemed to pull dark forces there to it, or darkness, you might say, that
Right.
surrounds certain places. Yeah, you
Just
have
like
to
the
wonder.
hanging tree.
Yeah.
Once you have that traumatic stuff that happens over and over and over, that just permeates the ground. It almost becomes like like the Native Americans had sacred ground, or they had burial grounds, and that tree that has all those traumatic experiences from people killing themselves, it's literally blood in the ground.
Mm. I actually ran into a tree one time. I told you about that. I think that was a hanging tree. I think something very bad had happened on that tree because it looked like a twisted soul. And that was the first time, I think the only time I've ever been asked to bless a tree. Okay. And I did a little thing around it. I did the salt and all that around it, but I still felt a darkness to it. And it was like maybe 2 weeks later, that tree got struck and destroyed by lightning.
Wow.
It was weird. Like I think sometimes God or whatever takes care of certain things that we can't, maybe something like that. I've known a lot of places of darkness and evil, Gerald, that either burned down usually or were destroyed somehow or another like that by acts of God, as the insurance companies call them. Uh, I think some places just too evil to stand long or stay long in that situation.
Right.
But anyway, I think the Island of Dolls would definitely be one of those places like that, or like that island I spent the night on. There's some places that's just very much darker than other places, like that suicide forest you was talking about and all that. You can see bad things are bound to happen in places like that. So my advice, and I'm sure you'd advise the same thing, don't go there. Stay away from it. Might be the best shot.
Either that, or you better be saying some prayers and having some protection.
Oh yeah. Uh, That's like that night on that island, during that episode, I was like, now what am I doing here again? Why am I here? What am I doing this for? But anyway, you get in those situations, yeah. Chicky Boo says dolls can be used as a trigger object to entice ghosts to communicate or move. Yeah, that's never a good idea either, though. Like I say, dolls seem to be more than anything else open to demonic interference and use. Manipulation by these things. It's not. I'm gonna tell you why, and I'm gonna have to do a show on this one night. Okay, there's a lot of people out there doing ghost hunting the wrong way. Okay, you're doing things the wrong, bad way. You're not doing the real, honest to gosh ghost hunting the way it should be done. I'm gonna have to do a thing on that one. I'm gonna tell you why. Because people keep coming to me, I had this thing follow me home or that thing follow me home. You shouldn't have anything following you home. Okay, do not take your children with you while you do this stuff. Okay, don't do that. But they're doing this for all the wrong reasons and all the wrong ways. Okay. So I'm
Right.
gonna have to talk to them about that one day. I'm gonna have to have a long talk with these people. They're stirring up trouble.
There was another doll I was going to bring up, was a doll called Mandy from Canada. And this doll has like all the attributes or attributions of all the other dolls we've talked about. You can't have it. You can't sleep in the same room with it, or you'll have nightmares about this doll and the little girl that it's was associated with it. You can't have a mirror in the room, or all of a sudden you'll start seeing orbs and portals show up. This doll is just incredible. You'll hear it's in a wood case of with glass sides and stuff on it, and the door. You'll hear tapping from the inside of the case at night while you're trying to sleep. It's you'll hear voices from it.
Well, you remember the author Anne Rice, the one who wrote the Interview with the Vampire?
Right.
Um, she had life-size dolls. She collected life-size, I mean, actual size of people dolls, and she had them in her mansion in New Orleans. And she said that she had certain rooms she put them dolls in because they kept showing up in her dreams. That's not good.
Right.
That's not good. That's a bad sign right there, folks. Okay. I don't think I'd want them in my house, but anyway, there's no telling how much money she paid for these things. I mean, they were very Victorian looking, life size dolls. She probably paid a lot of money for them. She's not with us anymore. Man, right.
And the other thing about Mandy is that you can't have her in the same room with other dolls, or the other dolls, the arms will be ripped off. If it's porcelain, their heads will break. They'll wake up the next morning and the doll will be in pieces.
Yeah, Mandy was very demonic in my book. I mean, here's the thing about it. When you talk about the demonic, I'm not going to get into that tonight either, but usually the demonic does 3 stages on you. Okay. First, it's what I call feeling you out. Okay. Starts messing with you, feeling you out, trying to pick up on you, what scares you, what pushes your buttons and all that. That's the first stage. Second stage is when it starts really messing with you. It can start trying to manipulate you and do things to you. The third stage, and this is when it really gets rough, is when it gets physical with you. Okay.
Right.
That's when it starts scratching you, doing stuff to you, attacking you in your dreams, or whatever the situation is. When it goes up to the third stage, demonologists say that's when it's going to get bad. That's the plateau you don't want to get to. It's better to nip it in the bud first and second stage. Because by the third stage, guess what it's done? It's got more powerful. The power level has risen with that. And it's harder to deal with it. That's where you're going into full blown possession of something, okay? Is past that third stage. But first, when that's the first thing I asked when I interviewed him, I'd say, have you been attacked physically by this thing? I've been attacked physically. I got one of them tried to kill me on a stairwell one time. I felt his claws in my back. I ended up with bruises from those claws on my back. Okay. This is real stuff, folks. But that's the first thing I asked. Has it got physical with you yet? Because if it hasn't, then I feel much better about it. But if it's got physical with you, then we need to really start thinking about dealing with this immediately. Because it's done ramped up, And if a doll starts doing something like that, you definitely know you're
Right.
dealing with an absolute demonic thing going on here. Because violence is part of their nature.
Yep.
Destructive. That's the way it
And
works.
then eventually the worst stage would be even after that, where they start manipulating you and making you do stuff that the doll influences you.
Yeah.
Now, I
Yeah,
see
when you
John
start,
Foreman asked a question about Mandy, and I don't know who owns Mandy, but it's in a museum right now, just like all the other dolls. It's in a museum in Canada. So if you just look up Mandy haunted doll online, you'll find the story. I don't know who originally owned it.
when it starts getting physical, definitely that's a bad sign. Especially if children. I'll tell you the thing about it, Gerald. Here's the thing about it. In a family unit, It goes after the children and the dogs first, physically. Most of the time, okay. Unless it's got a real distinct attachment to the grown person. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
If they're attacking a family unit, they go after the dogs, the cats, and children because they are the more vulnerable in that situation. That's what they attack. When you hear that going on, you know things have gone south real quick, really badly. Don't let it get to that point. That's what I always tell people. Don't let it get to the point where they're starting to. Because I have been attacked, and I know I've been scratched, I've been bitten, I know I've been attacked by these things. Okay, they don't play around with you, especially when they get physical. And it's not good for you to play around with them when they get physical too. It's time to nip that problem in the bud. But you don't want it to get to that point. That's the main thing, you know. And if you, like I said earlier, if you're gonna buy a doll, buy something new, okay? Don't buy something somebody else has used because you don't know what trouble you're getting, okay?
Right.
That includes anything, not just dolls, you know.
You know, most of these dolls that
But
are
if you're gonna,
haunted took the name of the little girl or boy that had the doll in its possession, whether it's Annabelle, Robert,
Mhm.
Mandy, they all had the names of the people that owned them or possessed them. They named them the same name.
Well, these forces, you're all using these items to make the inroads they need to do to make the progress they want to make with people. They use these items. Items are a form of manipulation to that respect. But if you're gonna buy, well, I was gonna say though, if you buy antiques, it's a good idea to sort of maybe do a little cleansing on them, you know, just to make sure that if you're gonna get antiques, make sure you're covering all your bases. Absolutely, with that, absolutely. But dolls can be,
I have one more that's really creepy if you want to hear about it.
yeah.
It was in Japan and around the early 1900s, like 1918. It was Okikaku. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but anyway, that was another one that the brother gave the little girl, little sister, a doll, and they named it the same name as the girl, and the same stuff started happening. You know, heard voices, and it was moved, and they heard a little girl talking to it all the time, and they heard the doll talk back to her. Well, she died a year later of a disease, and so they finally they donated the doll to a temple of monks in Japan, and they're caretakers of it now. And the strange thing is, they have to have a caretaker just for that doll for its needs, and its hair actually grows. When it was donated to the temple, it had bobbed hair, shorter than their shoulders, and they noticed that the hair was growing, and they have to keep the hair trimmed.
Mm. Well, that's kind of like the thing with Robert the doll. You know, they were dressing a little boy the same way as the doll. They were making a connection that really they shouldn't have. Like I said, it was like his twin brother kind of a thing. You know, which is weird.
Right.
Uh, don't make the connection. Don't make strong connections for stuff like that. You know, because it will probably lead to trouble down in the long run. And when you make that kind of connection, don't forget other forces can make that same connection too, you know?
It makes me wonder if somebody has a split personality or multiple personalities, if they could transfer one of those personalities into an object.
Well, the thing is, a lot of demonologists have found, I'm not saying that, I'm not painting this with a broad brush now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this happens every time, but a lot of so called personality disorders are demonic infestation of that person. The demons use that as sort of to hide behind it. I think it is a mental illness, of course, without a doubt, but they can use it, magnify it, hide behind it, and use it as a weapon against that
Right.
person and people around them, for that matter. They love personality disorders or split personalities, whatever name you want to give them.
Yeah,
They
because
love that.
if you have two personalities to say as a person, then a demon can come in, and who's gonna say anything about a third or a fourth? Just like Legion. How many personalities or how many of the demons were in Legion?
John Fortman says, I wonder if the doll giving brother wished the sister harm. How much older was he? I don't know. You know
Oh,
that, Drew?
no, I don't know how. I'm assuming it was an older brother, the way the story read that I remember, and I don't know if he was 3 or 4 years older, or if he was a teenager and she was a young girl. I don't really know.
Mhm. That's interesting. Well, he might not have. I kind of got the feeling it was inadvertent. He might have not really meant that because I don't think he knew a whole lot about it. You never know what some people's true intentions are, though.
Right.
They hide them
But, you,
very well sometimes.
but usually a mother, gives us a gift, a doll to a child, or a brother to a younger sibling, or a grandparents to the grandbabies. They give them dolls or toys. So I mean, it's fairly harmless, I think. But you never know.
Yeah. You never know. You never know what you're getting. Here's what I've warned people before. When you take something or someone gives you something, it's yours. Okay. More in more ways than one. Okay. It becomes yours. And not just your responsibility, but it becomes you to a certain spiritual level as well. It becomes part of you. So be
Right.
very careful what you take from people. And some people wish you harm with things. They will give them to you. They want to give you that so that that's part of the process. If I wanted to put a curse on you, Gerald, I would give you that curse in some form or another. I would hand it to you and you would take it, then it's yours. And it's on you, okay? It's on you until you give it away. You'd have to. The
Right.
only other way you can break the curse, but the other way is to give it to somebody else, which ain't good. It's not a good idea to do that, but some people will. Just get rid of it. They'd rather sacrifice somebody else for it. Yeah, you remember that movie Drag Me to Hell?
No, I don't think I know that one.
Yeah, watch that. But that was the thing about it. To get rid of the curse, she had to give it to somebody else, and she didn't want to do that, which is not good. But some people wouldn't hesitate to do it. You know,
Yep.
so
It's
curses
just
get
like
passed
everything else in life, when you receive a gift, it depends on what you're going through at that time. If you're openly accepting that gift, then
on. Yeah.
you're opening your soul and your heart to receive whatever it is, whether it's good or evil. You're opening it up. So if somebody gives you that doll and it's haunted, you're openly, willingly receiving that.
John Fortman says there seems to be a trifecta correlation of mental illness, childhood trauma, and psychic sensitivity. I think, John Fortman, some people, if they have psychic scars or even mental scars, you might say, on their psyche, if they have that kind of trauma, it can warp and twist you to a certain extent. It can change you. Most of the time, it changes people for the bad or does bad things to them. But sometimes they're not responsible for it. It could be like child abuse or mental anguish of some sort, pain or whatever the situation is. If it scars your soul, the demonic loves that because that is a aberration on your soul. In other words, that is a scar. That is a weak point.
Right.
Okay, you take a scar on your hand. If you got a big scar on your hand, that skin is going to be weaker than the skin around it. That's just the way scars are. They never heals back 100%, no matter what you do. That's like when you break a bone. Your bone may mend, but it'll never be 100% again because now it's been broken. It's not as strong as it once was. Sometimes it can be a little bit stronger, but some people say it can still be weaker in its context because it is not like it was before. Well, that's very much like when we talk about time being a river. Okay. If you step into that river at a certain place, you step in there as Gerald. Next day you come back, you're still Gerald, but you're not the same person stepping in that river again. You change because time has moved forward. You had some different experiences before you came back and put your leg in that river again.
Right.
Okay. That's just the way things go. And if and the demonic recognizes these scars as weak points, chinks in your armor, you might say.
Yep.
They'll work on them. That's just the way they are, like sharks to blood. That's what they go for. And if you have some type of a mental illness, and it could be a very low, mild kind of a mental illness, it could be obsession of some sort, or whatever the situation. That's what they go for, because that's your weak point, and that's the way they're
Right.
going to attack you. And that's why I warn people. I talk to people about this all over the world about these situations. Shore up your weak point. You know, that's just
Yep.
like a door in a castle. If you know that door's weak, that's where you put your timbers and reinforce that door. Okay. And that's what you need to do with yourself. If you know that you've got a weakness, whatever it may be, whether it's pornography, gambling, drinking, or whatever the situation is, make sure you enforce that. Make sure you make it stronger, because that's what they're going to come after.
Right.
And that's the way it works.
You know,
I
you
think that's
said,
what's happening. I think that's what's happening with dolls. Okay, that we're talking about tonight. These certain forces knew that this was a way in, and they used it. They
yep.
utilized it, especially with children. They're smart. The forces of darkness ain't dumb. Okay, they're real smart. Don't ever shortchange them, because they
Right.
don't insult intelligence. They're very smart. But you got to be smarter. Okay, that's just the way it goes.
Yep. You said something very interesting that I've said for a long time, that we're all time travelers. Everybody in chat right now are time travelers. Every time I go to speak, before I can get a word out, seconds have went by, so we're in the future. Or anytime I have a thought, before I can finish my thought, we've moved into the future. So everybody every day is experiencing time travel.
Chicky Boo said ventriloquism is an act of stagecraft using a puppet, which in essence is a doll. It's freaky too, by the way, but that person's personality is in that doll. When you look at it that way, okay? Because that doll is part of him. He's moving the hands, he's moving the mouth, and he's talking through it. That doll is an extension of that man or woman that's doing that. You got to think about it that way.
Right.
That's okay for entertainment purposes, but it could go bad the other way too. When you think about it, it could be bad spiritually for that person if you're not careful. That doll could become a life of its own, start taking you over. Worst case scenario, the demonic could get in this doll and start working on you. So that's one thing that's always kind of freaky to me, was ventriloquism. Especially with the dolls and all that. Kind of freaky.
Right. Yeah. Once your doll or the object starts influencing you and your behavior, like you start
Mm-hmm.
start acting different than you would have before you got the doll, or you don't go out of your house no more, or you don't go hang out with friends because that doll has so much influence over you.
The lamb chops with the Sherry. Yeah, he
That
was
was a puppet,
okay.
a
Lamb
hand
chop was
puppet.
okay. He was a sock puppet. He didn't look quite so freaky. She was a good ventriloquist, though.
Yeah.
Folks
Punch
said,
and
when I was
Judy
growing
and
up in a haunted
Lamb
house, I had
Chop
a
and
dog named Sparky that I loved by day and by night. Could just feel it struggling to animate. It had come attached to a pajama bag. Ugh, that don't sound good.
no.
Well, I tell you what, like I told Jessica, if a doll starts moving around, I'll call somebody. Okay, that's not a good sign. All right. Take that as a bad sign.
And if you
Well, I
start
think we.
missing, objects, car keys and stuff, and you have a doll in the house, you might want to start checking around the doll to see if that's where they end up.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the poltergeist thing too. Stuff disappearing a lot and then showing up somewhere else or not showing up at all. Some things disappear never to be seen again. I don't want to be one of them, by the way. Anyway, uh, that to me is freaky. That's poltergeist stuff. But dolls have been manipulated by poltergeists a lot of times. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. That is freaky. I have actually heard instances of people. I think it was a movie I was watching the other day. This girl walked in the room. She looked over to the side, and the doll was standing up on the table, and it fell down. That's not good. That doll starts moving around like that. But like I say, the demonic love stuff like that. They because it's like a representation of you. If they can't possess you, next best thing is your doll.
That's right.
Yep.
Anything you love and have an attachment to, that's what they're going to use.
Mm-hmm.
It could be
Damien.
a favorite sports car.
Yeah. Damien says we are bioorganic, sentient fungus, eternal divine seeds, blessed with the power of choice. Just that's one way to put it. It was fine by day, Jordan. So as long as it didn't come alive on you at night, that was the main thing. But anyway, I think we've looked at dolls about everywhere we can tonight. It's a freaky thing, but like I say, they represent us. What's your final thoughts on that, Gerald?
Well, just like we've said and people said in chats, be careful what you bring into your life and into your house, whether it's a secondhand from a secondhand shop or whether it's antique furniture from your family. If you do love that object and it has sentimental value, it probably had sentimental value to the people that owned it. So there could be some of that essence that travels with it. So make sure you say prayers and blessings and make sure you make it known that nothing can enter your house without being blessed or your blessing. No evil can enter your house.
That's very good advice, Cheryl, because I do that constantly. It doesn't hurt to do it every week, Make sure your house is blessed and anointed with all whatever the doorways, especially.
Right.
Very important to make sure you do that, and also be good to your dolls. Maybe they'll be good to you.
Yeah, don't be like the brat you see on TV that drag them around and beat them up and tear them up, because that might be how it all starts.
It might be like a Toy Story, Yeah, I have them mess with you a little bit. So be good to your dolls. Maybe they'll be good to you back. I tell you what, we got to look at when you look at dolls. Okay, they can be like anything else in this world. What you put into them is what you can get back. So make sure you put good stuff in them. That way, maybe you get good stuff back. That's the one thing. That's what I used to tell children. You need the kids. Some kids, Gerald, you give them a toy, they immediately start trying to destroy it. They really do. There's something wrong with children like that. Okay, they need some discipline or something. There's something going on with that. That's destructive. That's not playing. We used to sit down as a kid. I could sit down on the ground and play with bottle caps for hours.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't try to destroy them, I was playing with them. We had toys, but now I think there's two things about that. One is they know if they destroy it, mom and dad's going to buy them another one. So they don't care, they don't care about that. But that's not good either. Okay, and that's not good for that to happen. Another thing is they're taking their emotional output out on the toys. That's not good too. If they're doing that, there's something wrong. So
right.
Watch your children when they play, okay? Make sure that they're mentally fit to do these things. Because if they're not doing things right, like I say, just because you get a toy doesn't mean you immediately start trying to destroy the thing. or blow it up or whatever you're trying to do to it. And I've
And if
seen
it
kids
happens
do
to
it.
be a doll when they get old enough, get rid of it. If they move out, get rid of the doll.
Yeah, yeah. And here's another thing I always said about it. You can play with your child, but some people don't know how to do. They pick on the child, and you can do dogs and cats the same way. The more you pick at them, the more aggressive they become. Don't do that. That's not
Right.
right. That's not playing. That is torture. That is abuse. I don't care which way you look
Absolutely.
at it. That ain't how you play or you love something. If you are trying to play with something like that or treat something like that or trying to love something like that, there's something wrong with you because that's not how you do that.
Yep.
That's not the normal behavior. Okay. You might ought to look for some help because you're outputting the wrong what? Emotions. And that's what we're
Yep.
talking about tonight with these dolls. They're recipients of not only so called spirits, they're recipients of our emotions. All toys are, not just dolls. They are recipients of our emotion. And you watch and make sure what kind of emotions they're receiving. Okay. I can tell you a whole lot right there. Well, this has been a
Absolutely.
very interesting show. You want to remind everybody again of what you got coming up this week?
Yeah. So today at 4 p.m. Central, we're testing out new times and new days to see if we're going to add another day or just do special shows once in a while. We got John Stasko, Bigfoot explorer, experiencer, and we're going to have him on Thursday. And then Saturday night, I'll be on Geezer Geeks, and it has Jim Goodall and Robert Bauer and conspiracy music, Clay, and also Mr. B from Australia, the Truth Seekers. And then Sunday night, it'll be probably Sunday afternoon, 4 p.m. We have Brown Dwarf, and we're going to be talking about the weird stuff that happens in California in the redwood forests, whether it's Bigfoot, Dogman, all kinds of weird stuff. And then Monday, we'll be back here on the road less traveled.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me. And of course, this week, Friday night, I will have Mr. Drewinski from Cryptid Warfare on Paranormal Point of View. You do not want to miss that show. And he's a fantastic fellow. We're going to have a little talk with him. And I got something probably special coming up Wednesday. And that'll be Hunting the Shadows. And all those shows are at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 o'clock Central. So be there or be square or where or whatever. And we appreciate you joining us tonight for another trip down the road less traveled. And we took our dolls with us this time, right, girl?
That's right. It's always good to have a
Yep.
companion.
So we hope you have a fantastic week out there, okay? Be careful, keep your head on swivel, keep your wits about you. Remember, keep your wits sharper than your knife, okay? And that's pretty sharp.
That's pretty
And
sharp.
beware where you're at in your surroundings because we are strangers in a strange land, okay? Absolutely. But we hope you have a fantastic week and we get together again with you Wednesday, whatever day girl's coming back. We hope you have a good time. Don't do anything we wouldn't do. If you do, don't get caught, okay? All right. And we appreciate you being here, and we hope you have a fantastic week ahead.
That's right.
Until we
Love
get,
and peace, everybody.
until we get together again, Godspeed.